This week, the ABC waved around figures claiming its coverage of Israel's war has been so balanced that complaints from both perspectives were just about equal. The statistics would be a surprise to most viewers who see anything but balance. But how do they get away with it when the ABC charter makes impartiality and the commitment to the facts a matter of law? Show of Force reporter Daniel Lukowitz takes up the story.
The ABC always likes to give off the vibe everything is fine. We're not biased. Bias is just in the eye of the beholder. Is it? When it comes to the taxpayer-funded broadcaster and matters on Israel or anything Jewish, it's not always what the ABC says, but what they leave out. Take, for example, a recent episode of their faith and religious show, Compass. The premise for the program was about a very particular group of Jews speaking out against the Jewish state, Israel.
I think it's important that Jews or non-Jews are really challenged on what they're backing, whether it's in Gaza or the West Bank or wherever it is. This is being done in our name. I think for my parents that ostracisation was hard. And they were very involved in the Jewish community. All these factors kind of coalesced in what I would call an intellectual awakening, that my father and mother became more alive to the reality of what they had been indirectly supporting for most of their life, which was namely Israeli occupation. They started seeing Palestinians as human beings.
The ABC described Anthony Lowenstein as a leading voice among Australian Jews. But is he? Perhaps in the minds of the ABC, but as the program itself acknowledged, Australian Jews see him as little better than Hamas. That's not a quote by us, by the way, that's from the ABC. Again, quoting the ABC, they say he has been labelled a traitor and self-hating Jew. Yet Anthony Lowenstein, who only represents a tiny fringe minority, is clearly an acceptable Jewish voice for the ABC to promote. So did the ABC's Compass also do a half-hour piece on what it's like being a Jewish person in Australia who might support Israel or who might oppose Hamas? No and no. They also published an extensive summary of the story, written by a reporter, Brietta Haig. She was commissioned to produce the Lowenstein short. Is the ABC aware that Brietta's name was listed as a signatory to an open letter that made a number of extremely false claims condemning Israel? The activist letter condemned what it described as Israel's bombing of the Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital on October 18. Except that hospital was in fact blown up by a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket which fell short, not by Israel. In regards to the mass murder of Jews which took place on October 7, the letter simply said the armed attacks on October 7 by Palestinian people cannot be decontextualised. Huh? Decontextualised? Apparently, the mass murder of Jews and the violent rape of women by a genocidal, racist Hamas can be excused. The letter goes on, trotting out the usual anti-Israel talking points, purporting to represent the views of concerned members of the artistic community. It took us less than 60 seconds to find Brietta Haig's name on numerous examples of anti-Israel activism. Do the ABC not do these checks? And if not, why not? Surely the ABC's Charter of Editorial Independence doesn't permit using public funds to push the causes of activists. The letter reads more like a first-year art student essay rather than any serious analysis. The bias and dishonesty is unbelievable. Every now and then the ABC drops its guard and we get to hear what they really think in the newsroom. When it comes to bombing Israel and firing rockets into Tel Aviv, at the ABC, Hamas's actions are not acts of aggression or even terrorism. No, at the ABC, they're described as resilience. Consider how many people at the ABC would have reviewed that wording and none of them saw a problem. Last week, the ABC's managing director was called to Parliament in part to respond to what's going on with anti-Semitism inside the ABC. He and his executives insist there's nothing to see here, and they have the numbers to prove it.
Since the start of the conflict in regards to the Israel-Gaza war, we've had 3,939 complaint issues. setting aside, as you say, the 1,974 issues from that single Q&A episode, the Ombudsman says we've had 1,965 issues that have been complained about. So of those, 80% relate to bias and a lack of balance, and 51% of that suggest content that was pro-Israel, and 47% suggesting the other side.
By the way, that's the de facto member for Palestine asking the questions, Green Senator Mehreen Faruqi. She even dressed up for the occasion. Sometimes you almost have to feel sorry for the ABC's Managing Director, David Anderson. Almost. As much as the title suggests he's in charge, even he knows that's not really true.
Due to our rather inflexible impartiality standards, that when you are seen not to be taking any side, you're against that whatever side that your perspective is. And I see that coming through in the complaints, and from different perspectives. We do take the complaints seriously, particularly when we've made a breach of some description or we've had to resolve an issue of accuracy. And again, this is where the complaints actually help us. So if we've got an issue of accuracy and the complaints come through and we can see that we can resolve this, then we can verify it and we make the change. So what I don't see is systemic bias one way or the other.
Is he watching the same channel as the rest of us?
What I do see is this evolving complex issue.
The ABC will insist it's balanced because it receives complaints from both sides. That's probably correct, but the substance of those complaints matters. On one side, you have Palestinian activists who are clearly quite happy to lie and lie often. On the other hand, you have people who simply want the ABC to tell the truth.
Nuance matters, words matter, and I see us have just, we have worked very hard to make sure that we are accurately describing the situation as correctly as possible.
It's been a long time, 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 a long time since anyone meant what they said.
I just wanted to turn, if I could briefly, to the cancellation of the Deborah Conway appearance earlier this year. Her appearance on an ABC Victoria Evenings radio show had been cancelled because her unspoken support for Israel had been too controversial. Is that your understanding of what took place?
Yeah, so, Senator, I have a broad understanding of this in that Deborah Conway was booked and then cancelled and then rebooked later. Mr Fain, do you have more details on that?
Yeah, that's thank you, Senator. That's what happened. Ms Conway was due to be on a radio program. There was a producer that was unsure about whether that booking should go ahead. The program was cancelled at the last minute. That was then referred up to the manager, in which case the decision was made that Ms Conway should be on the program, and she was rebooked and appeared on the program a couple of days later, and the program also apologised, and that apology was accepted.
And why was the producer unsure in the first instance about whether this appearance should go ahead? What's your understanding of that?
Pardon me?
Sorry, what's your understanding of that was the case?
My understanding is that they weren't sure about what was going to be the focus of the segment and what was going to be part of that segment, and they made a decision that they thought they needed to refer that up to a manager.
Because of a concern of controversy, because of the views that Ms Conway had expressed?
I'd have to speak to the producer. Sorry, Senator, I can take that on notice if you like.
If you wouldn't mind, if you don't know today.
Yes.
I think we all await the real explanation on that one.